Coleman Hughes. Since Trump has been president, I've been exposed to a lot of stuff that I wouldn't normally focus on. He was one of the names that came across, I guess, my YouTube or my social media stuff during the Trump administration. Him, Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, I think, I think that's her name, and I did a whole video on her. Coleman Hughes was one of the ones that came across, but he was a little different. I didn't know who he was in 2017 or back then when I first heard the name, and I saw a brief snippet of him being. He's usually seen, at least by me, in interviews with non-media people. Like it looks like just people are interviewing him on his thoughts on Black America and race in America, and he has a lot to say about it. And I saw a recent thing he did. I believe it's from 2019. I could be wrong on that. At Columbia University, I didn't know he was a Columbia University freshman or undergraduate. Is what the title of the video was, and he's talking about anti-racist versus humanitarianism. Basically, Malcolm X will be anti-racist, and Martin Luther King will be a humanitarianism. I think that's the phrase he used. And he has this theory that he's probably doing a thesis at Columbia on. I believe he's a psychology major or some major like in the arts like that, the social arts. And I watched some of it up to the point he does the interview. I wanted to see what he had to say. He came across as a very intelligent young guy. He's very passionate, it seems. Like you watch him give his speech and you see he's passionate about it, what he's saying about his beliefs in these things. One of the things that struck me as odd, because before seeing this speech, I've only ever seen him in a political aspect, and that's the thing too. Like a lot of like Ben Shapiro's and I think it's the Daily Wire, like those right-wing people promote Coleman Hughes, where they say, "Oh well, black people are wrong about black people, and here's a black guy that's right about black people," and they usually point to him. There's another guy on YouTube, a black guy with glasses. I can't remember his name. Candace Owens is one of those like, black people are wrong about black people, and here's a black person that'll tell you that we're right about black people. And it's usually the most racist, vile white people, or white nationalist, or Ben Shapiro types. In my eyes, I think they're vile. Sure, they're nice people to their friends and you know friends and families. They're nice people, but to me, in my eyes, they're vile people. Because my thing was, why do you care so much about black people, right? Ben Shapiro has this obsession with black people. I've only ever been I guess, seen him talking about black people and black communities in America and how we as black people have done ourselves injustices by basically being who we are is basically what Ben Shapiro says. And then he'll end his speeches by, "Oh well, I'm right about black people. Here's a black person that could tell you that." And he usually introduced like a Candace Owens or like an Officer Tatum to you know back up his points about Black America and how basically Black culture is bad for Black Americans, something like that. He says, and Coleman uses in the same light, but I think he's still young. I don't know how old the dude is, but he seems young. And his theory is young. And the thing is, I agree with him. He's right. There is anti-racist and humanitarianism. And he's saying basically he likes to look at race or issues with race from a day-to-day perspective, whereas the anti-racist is looking at racism in America from a historical perspective, and that's why anti-racists are so angry and so bitter and so. I use a couple of phrases, but basically he thinks anti-racists are people that hurt themselves because they want to hurt white people, or they think white people deserve less than basically what would make me anti-racist if I think my white counterpart deserves less than I do. And basically humanitarianism, like a Martin Luther King, would say I deserve, or I should work basically as hard as my white counterpart. That's basically where it kind of ends. It doesn't really talk about reparations from a humanitarian standpoint. It doesn't talk about what's owed to Black Americans. And like I said, humanitarianism from Human Cole's um, Coleman Hughes speech is basically day to day looking at racism, and it forgets all about history, and that's the only way that works. It's like I commit a crime last year, right? Say I kidnapped someone. I let them go, got away with it, and I'm out living my life. I'm back at work, whatever. But I kidnapped, say, a 21-year-old girl, and I had her chained in my basement for a month. And I didn't do anything to her. Maybe I fed her, whatever. I assaulted her, maybe. I don't know. Held her against her will, let her go, and now I'm living my life, right? I'm a good person. Maybe I'm doing community service. Maybe I'm working hard, paying bills, whatever. And say the cops approach me and they said, Olaf, you did this crime like 2 years ago, last year. And, I could say from a humanitarian, humanism standpoint, I think that's the word he uses, that, I'm not doing a crime now, so why should I go to jail, right? Anti-racists would say, but you did the crime last year and you didn't serve any justice for it. There was no justice served for your crime, right? So you should pay some price. And maybe they might bring the girl. I don't know if the girl's still around. You could bring the girl as a witness against me. Should I serve? Should I do time or pay some sort of penalty for that? And the anti-racist said, fuck yeah, you should. And that's basically at the core of it is what reparations is about, and is what I think a good part of the anti-racist movement is. I'm not even familiar with the movement. It's not something that I'm familiar with at all, other than I think BLM is characterized as anti-racist. Not by themselves. Well, by themselves, but the way Coleman uses anti-racist, he uses it in the same definition as like Antifa, like the way white nationalists would. And he has a lot of white nationalist views and anti-racist, right? Coleman Hughes tries to be centrist. He tries to be like, I'm looking at this from a center, non-political perspective, right? And he says all this stuff. But the only people that use it is the right, and white nationalist groups and people on the right. And I watched the thing, and towards the end of it, I think there's a Columbia University. I think it's a Columbia University that's done, asks about politics in this. And he says, this has to be and Coleman Hughes says, I'm not political. I'm not doing this for politics or anything like that. But good question came up with, like, well, it seems like, I felt the guy didn't ask because he's a white kid, probably teenager or something like that, with glasses, and he's very nervous. I think the only reason he didn't ask the question I would have asked is because he's white and Coleman Hughes is black, and you don't want to, like, it's like saying an N-word, basically. What the white kid asked him was, it's all good and what you're saying sounds good, but the only people that care about this, the only people that use your rhetoric, the only people that read into what you're saying is white nationalists on the right. Oh, not nationalists, but white people on the right, Republicans. Those groups are promoting your speech. People on the left aren't. People in the middle aren't. But your core audience is on the right, mainly made up of white people that are wealthy, that are in rural areas or suburbs or whatever, or even poor white people, like rednecks, right? And he's like, well, why is that? If your thing isn't political, why is it so appealing to those people and not the people on the left, the Democrats, the black urban person, the college-educated black urban person? Why? And I forgot what his excuse was. He said he has no control over that, and he just puts this out there, and whoever, like, listens. This is kind of what he says, right? It's like if I'm saying, hey, free food in this in my office right here, right? And I look out my office door and said, hey guys, I have free lunch in here, and say half the office is white and half the office is black, and only the white people come into my office, right? And someone says, oh, why is that? I was like, I don't know. I didn't say white people come get food or black people come get food. I just said, hey, there's food in my office, right? So he kind of dodges that political question. But the thing with me, the kid should have asked him is, why is this so important to you, right? Why is someone being anti-racist offensive to you, that you create this theory, right? It had to offend you or spark something in you. What did it spark? Why did it spark that, right? Did you encounter racism as a kid, right? Martin Luther King, right? The first story I've ever heard about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, to some extent, to his extent, was they became the people they became because something happened when they're younger, in their youth. Martin Luther King, you probably read the first story you read about him. He's playing one day wherever he lived. I think this is in the South, and he had white friends and black friends, and everyone's playing together. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but he's playing with his friends, and one day the white mom came and got her white kids, and all the white kids left, and they just disappeared, and he did not have white friends anymore. He's trying to figure out why, and that's when his first encounter with racism, or his first encounter with him being different, or him being not good enough to have a best friend that's white. And that made Martin Luther King who he was. And everything that followed from, that event made sense to me. So when I look at Martin Luther King's story, I said, okay, this is how it started, and this is why he is who he is. Coleman Hughes, I don't know what happened. I like to know that story. Malcolm X, similar thing happened with Malcolm X um, in his development. I'm not clear on the Malcolm X story, but I know from what I've heard, it's this similar development. Something sparked in him. He wasn't who he was before he became Malcolm X. But something flipped and he became Malcolm X. And we know his story. We know why he's like that, right? We know why BLM March. The BLM March before George Floyd, no. Something happened and BLM responded and they went out and marched. Not just black people, not just people in Minneapolis, but people around the planet went out and marched in response to something that aggravated them on a humanistic level. It aggravated them on a human level, right? It wasn't like, my Lamborghini got repossessed or, someone scratched my Lamborghini. It wasn't that shallow, right? It was, something is killing us and we're going to go out and march. Something is affecting a part of our population and we're going to go out and march and support that part of the population. It's about that part of the population, not about anything else. It's about black people in our population. They're a part of the human race. They're a part of us. We go out and march for them, right? And that's the story of BLM. And that's the only story of BLM. And that's how BLM came about, right? And that's, if you want to say, the progenitor, the creation of it, right? It wasn't created because a bunch of black guys are sitting around smoking weed with guns and thinking, how am I going to loot some shit and rob some stores? That's not how BLM started, right? And that's what Coleman Hughes would like you to think, and those people on the right, I think that's what they want us to think. Like, BLM is bad and Antifa is bad because it's just a bunch of lazy, pot-smoking people sitting around thinking about how they're going to destroy society and bring communism back and rape your white kids, and kidnap your white kids. It's not what BLM is about, right? And even if you hear what you want to hear or think what you want to hear, I mean, it's just plain as day. You go out and see it, right? And that's what I would ask Coleman Hughes. Like, why is this so important to you? You're a Columbia University freshman. You have a great life ahead of you as when you graduate, right? I work with Columbia University graduates at my law firm. They get everything handed to them. They get job offers before they graduate. Everything is set for your future. I'm a black guy. I care about black people, but I'm not promoting my take on history. I'm not saying you should ignore history and all humans should have equal shares of stuff. Or, if I committed a crime last year, I'm exonerated this year because it was last year. Don't work like that, right?